Hello and welcome to Live from FSS. I'm Scott Wolfson, your host and the owner of Florida Sun Studios. Live from FSS is a new weekly show we're broadcasting right here on Facebook Live on our fan page, Florida Sun Studios. The show will serve as a platform for all those interested in hosting their own shows, promoting their brands, promoting their businesses, getting their message out there. Live from FSS will include useful tips and techniques that you can use in your own productions. It'll also include industry interviews with experts in all fields, ranging from politics, legal, law enforcement, security analysts, sports figures, and much, much more. You may have had dreams of becoming the next big star, hosting your own show on reality TV, a sports show, a network news talk show. And you've realized, even if you've been a guest here at Florida Sun Studios and spent years doing the rounds of CNN and Fox and ABC and CBS interviews, you've realized that the chances of attaining that dream, of reaching that ultimate goal, of having your own network show are rather slim to none. Well, that's where Live from FSS comes into the mix. We provide that professional platform for you so you can get your message out there in a professional studio. And we'll have all the bells and whistles you're accustomed to seeing every day on network news and sports TV. Everything from multiple camera angles, in-studio guests, remote Skype video calls, graphics, titles, and much, much more. For those of you not familiar with Florida Sun Studios, or FSS as we're known in the industry, we are a small independently run broadcast studio located in beautiful downtown Fort Lauderdale, close to all the major downtown businesses, the airport, the highways, the bars everywhere in Fort Lauderdale, the seaport, the airport. And we also service all the major news networks, everyone from Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, ESPN, CNBC, ABC, CBS, NBC, CCTV, Al Jazeera. I can go on, and every other acronym that brings you news. We're also a full-service video production studio, offering the following services for our clients: commercials, internet videos, corporate videos, internet shows, now offering YouTube Live and Facebook Live shows, as our show right now is live on Facebook. And today, I want everyone out there in Facebook land, Florida Sun Studios fans, to join me in welcoming Stacey Honowitz to the set. Stacey is the head of the Sex Crimes Unit in Broward State Attorney's Office. She's also an accomplished author and also a network television legal analyst. Stacey, it's an honor having you on set today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here, Scott. I'm so glad that you invited me, and I'm so happy to be doing this, to talk about my books and my bracelets and sex crimes and things that generally people don't ever want to talk about. So it's great to be in the studio.
Thank you so much. Stacey, we've worked together, I think, probably the last decade and a half, 15 years.
Yes.
And I've had
as evidenced by your gray hair.
By the gray hair, the gray sideburns coming down here.
Yeah, I dye mine. Mine's gray from you too, so don't worry about it.
Well, I'm just the FSS authority in the flesh. They see me how it is. No makeup today, just the gray hair. But it's the message that we want to get out today, and the importance of what you do is what we want to profile today. And I figured no one better as an advocate for those sexual crime victims, whether it's rape on campus, our children who are victims to many predator stalking.
Absolutely.
It's unfortunately something that affects each and every one of us, whether we're parents or not. We know someone that has a kid or
who wants to be educated about it, wants to know about it. All these things that you mentioned are really important, and the reason why I'm here today, and again, I thank you for having me, is because I've been, in the sex crimes unit. I'm a prosecutor for close to 29 years, specifically in the sex crimes unit for over 25 years. And in all the years, I've seen the cases increase, meaning that there's so much more predator crime and sex crimes going on out there with the internet and with porn and all those things. And I think it's important for people to really know that they could be a victim and what to do if they are a victim, or what's really going on out there. I think people tend to bury their head in the sand about this stuff. Then they see it on the news. You've broadcasted many trials, many nights of breaking news about sexual predators that I've been on talking about it, and I think it's really time for people to wise up and realize that they need to educate their kids, and they need to be educated about certain things.
See, if I had to ask you, and we've covered major stories, nationwide stories from Simpson to Sandusky. If you had to say the couple of major breaking stories that captured the attention of this nation around the world that you provided legal commentary for, what cases come to mind?
Well, there have been a ton of big breaking cases, but I think probably that pertain to what I do was Michael Jackson. Certainly his death was breaking news, but we didn't talk legally. We talked legally when his molestation trial was going on. I mean, that was huge news. People were riveted. They couldn't believe that they saw an idol in that light. Did it really happen? Did it not? Who's going to testify? And there were so many angles that went along with it. Is he going to show up to court? Did he show up to court? He came in his pajamas. Is this kid really truthful? That case, number one. And the second one, of course, was Sandusky. I mean, anytime there's any kind of serial pedophilia and you're dealing with Penn State and Joe Paterno and what happened and who knew what, I mean, that, of course, carried us all over. Also, the Duke case, if people remember, the Duke Lacrosse case, where we covered it night after night, and then as it turned out, the district attorney went to jail on that case. So there's a lot of big, huge cases that get national press. But what happens is after that case is done, after we've covered it for 2 or 3 weeks and it's in the news every single day, we're inundated with it, people tend to forget. They don't remember things. They don't remember how important education is until another big story breaks. And that's what I try to do, is keep it in the news, keep it. What I'm trying to do with all the things that I've done is make sex crimes mainstream. And I'm not making it that we all love sex crimes. I'm talking about being able to talk about it, not be embarrassed about it, not be afraid to prosecute it, and to bring it into the homes of people so that parents know what they're dealing with.
And as you said, what people in the past, and even have some concern now, they think of it as a taboo subject.
Absolutely.
It shouldn't be a taboo subject. It should be something that we should say, listen, this is a serious subject matter. It affects all of us, whether we have kids or not. And we need to educate, right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is taboo and it is still uncomfortable. It's not water cooler talk. It's not when you walk around, you know, in the office. I mean, in my office we do, because that's what we do all day long, but for the average person. But when we were growing up, Scott, you know, it was going on, but it wasn't talked about. Now it really needs to be talked about. We have so much stuff going on. We have so much social media now that it is really incumbent. I think it's really parental malpractice if you don't talk about this stuff. It's neglectful not to introduce your kids to what the harm can be in logging on or chatting with a stranger. It used to be that we thought it was the stranger, you know, in a car down the street. And believe me, that stuff still goes on. But a lot of it now is meeting people in chat rooms and sexual predators luring kids and that child going to meet that person. So much of it has evolved, and there's so much of it that there needs to be a way that we can disseminate this information without people, you know, feeling embarrassed by it. You just can't be that way anymore. You can't be afraid to talk to your kids about their private parts and what they are and what their true names are.
We put together an edited montage of some of your video clips, some recent, some older, just to give the viewers a flavor of Stacey Honowitz on TV.
That's some flavor.
Let's go ahead and roll that footage.
And out front now, Paul Callan, our legal analyst, and Stacey Honowitz, a sex crimes prosecutor.
Look, any rape case in and of itself is difficult to prosecute, but you have a case here where you have a celebrity. You know, it's almost like a David and Goliath type situation. In this case, of course, it differs because if the state attorney is able to have all those other women come in and testify against him, if that testimony is admissible, then certainly it makes the case a lot easier.
Joining us is Stacey Honowitz. If you have a TV, you know Stacey Honowitz. She also is the supervisor of the Child Abuse Unit of the Florida State's Attorney Office. You've been doing this for 2-3 decades, I think, right?
Yes, a very long time.
This is what your life has been devoted to. The first question is, we're reporting more of this. Is there more of it, or because of technology and people now reporting things, is that what makes a difference?
Yeah, it's really what you just said. I mean, with technology, and people aren't afraid to come forward. Now people see it in the news. It's been going on for ages. People never reported it. It was really in the shadows. It's very interesting, Candy, because I've prosecuted a lot of cases with men who were boys when the abuse took place. And it's interesting, even though they're older and they're probably more able to know their way around a courtroom, they still have the same feelings as those little kids. You know, they break down. And you have to prepare them that the testimony will be very difficult. And what is so private and so secretive,
has to now come out into a court of law, and strangers are going to have to listen and make a decision. So you really have to get them past the shame and the embarrassment that they're already feeling. And of course, she's an American girl over there studying, and so we feel this need to protect her because of what happened. But they didn't just convict on a piece of DNA. They convicted on the totality of the circumstances. They had some DNA. They had inconsistent statements and stories that she gave, coupled with her behavior, coupled with DNA that wasn't challenged.
Erin, we see so many of these stories. I mean, you saw it with Sandusky, as recent as that case, where lots of times people in these positions, coaches, teachers, they take these kids under their wing, they groom them, they spend money on them, they trust them, and they do this all in an effort to have a relationship. And so it's not unusual that we're seeing this, and I'm sure we're going to see many more victims come forward now that one person has been able to go to the press.
When we heard about this, and as a sex crimes prosecutor for 28 years, I decided maybe it's time to bring awareness to this. And so that's why I created these bracelets that you're both
tell
wearing.
us about them. We're wearing them. What is
it? It says, even if passed out or spent.
Well, it's remember, I do not consent,
Okay.
even if passed out or spent.
Got it.
And the reason why I did this, it's not going to stop a rape. It's not Wonder Woman that's holding up her bracelet saying, back off. It's not going to happen. We know that. But it's raising awareness for women on campus and for the guys on campus that if they see a number of blue bracelets with these words, that maybe there'll be pause to think, hey, there could be consequences for my actions. And so these are going to glow in the dark.
Oh.
It's never going to stop someone.
Right.
We know that.
But it's awareness.
It's awareness. And we want women on campus to know that if, God forbid, they are assaulted, if they know that something has happened, not to be afraid to come forward.
Stacey, I think these bracelets are wonderful. They're a simple yet effective idea to get the message out there. Let me ask you, how long have these bracelets been around for?
They came out really this summer. That's when we really honed in on the idea. And the reason why I did it is you saw some of the clips where I talk about campus rape. And it was so prevalent in the news last year that I knew this wasn't going to stop rape, but I thought there's got to be a way to raise awareness in the colleges about drinking and what can go on if you're too drunk and if you don't consent, but someone thinks it's consent. So I made these bracelets because if you remember the case where the gentleman at college, she was fully passed out. They had it on 3 guys from, I think it was Vanderbilt or one of the schools. She was fully passed out. And all 3 players, I believe it was football players, had sexual intercourse with her when she was passed out. And they went to trial and they were convicted. And so I started thinking, well, I do all the stuff for the little kids. I write the books for the little kids to talk to them about private parts and who can touch your private parts and what to do if someone does. I figured, what about the older kids? Because they're getting themselves in trouble too. So I thought of the logo. Remember, I do not consent, even if passed out or spent. And it really means, listen, if I'm passed out or if you know I'm so drunk, I don't know what I'm doing, leave me alone. It's not going to stop rape. It's not going to do it. You're not going to wear this one day and, you know, like a superpower, it's going to stop someone from doing something. But I wanted enough kids to wear it on campuses that it raised awareness. Hey, they're wearing those blue bracelets. Hey, they're wearing those blue bracelets. What does it mean? And it gets the conversation going. So I've had, minimal success with it. In the beginning, a lot of the sororities in the schools were very interested. And then I think it kind of took a turn of almost like, what if I wear this? Am I not part of the crowd now? I think a lot of people, when I went out and spoke to them, they didn't want to feel like they were the only ones doing this. And so, we're out there. When I speak to campuses, when I talk to schools, we talk about them, and here and there we get some people that really want to wear it, that want to make an effort, and some people really have. When the bracelets came in, took it to school, took it to the sororities, posted on Facebook when they were wearing it, while they talk, because they have this discussion going on, and the discussion goes on, Scott, because inevitably there's a case where the girl goes to the police officer and says, "I was raped. I was passed out. I was so drunk. I didn't know what I was doing." And that's why really these came into play.
And we find out that, or I guess human nature, great idea, but maybe it doesn't hit home until unfortunately someone becomes a victim or knows someone who's a victim, and
Absolutely.
then the word spreads. So hopefully we can continue to get the message out there and ignite interest.
Absolutely. That's what it's all about. It's just awareness. Listen, I'm not trying to throw my ideas on somebody. I mean, in a way I am, of course, if I'm doing this. But you have to be smart enough yourself to say, listen, there is a need for education. These bracelets won't stop rape, but they educate. How do they educate? Because they have a message. They have a message that you might think about. And like I said, when I was in on the LA show talking when the bracelets first came out, I said, maybe it will give somebody pause. Maybe if they're in that situation and somebody sees someone with that bracelet, they think, hey, I know what this is all about. I have to back off. So again, nothing stops sex crimes, nothing stops sex abuse. But if you educate, education is knowledge, and knowledge is power. That's how you have to look at it.
We want to thank all of you who are joining us today on Facebook Live, watching live from FSS. We're honored to have Stacey Honowitz here, the head of the Broward County State Attorney's Sex Crimes Unit, an accomplished author and a television legal analyst. We encourage all of you to join into the conversation. Send us your questions and comments. We'll do our best to answer all your questions during the show. And for those of you who we don't get to during the show, we'll do so following. Well, we're going to also repurpose the material, edit the show, and put it on our Facebook page. It'll be put on our website. You can visit FloridaSunStudios.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Each and every week, we're going to be here live on Facebook, 11 a.m. Eastern Time every Thursday. We're going to have an industry expert, a guest that you won't want to miss. So sign up for our newsletter. Become a fan of the Florida Sun Studios page. Stacey, I'm so happy to have you here. Stacey, you're the author. We mentioned that you're an author, an accomplished author of two books, two great books, Genius with the Penis and My Privates Are My Privates. What was your motivation in writing these two books?
Well, I have to tell you, in prosecuting these cases, I would have parents come into the office and their child was a victim of a sex crime. And I would say to the parent, did you ever have the discussion with your child about their private parts, who can touch it, what to do? And they would, what do I say? What do I do? They would get almost in fetal position because they didn't know how to handle it. They knew it was important. They kept saying to me, I don't know how to start that car. One day I just wake up and tell them that's your vagina? I mean, that's your penis? Yes, that's what you have to do. But I thought to myself, why don't I try to make it easier for people? So I wrote the books to make it easy for a parent to go to the book if they're at a loss of words or don't know how to start. And it's so easy. It's in limerick form, and it gets the message out. Where they can touch you, how they can touch you, what to do if you've been touched, if you feel uncomfortable, how to call the police, who to go to, a friend. And so I wrote the book, My Privates Are Private, for little girls. I had more girl victims at the time, I have to say. And since there's been such an increase in sex crimes, I have to say, we see a ton of boy victims too. And I thought, not that a mother couldn't read this to a boy, but, I did Genius with a Penis, Don't Touch, because it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Read it. I always tell parents when I lecture, listen, we are so quick to show off our kids, right? Show grandmom your nose, show grandmom your eye. Where's your tummy? Where's your elbow? When they first learn about their private parts. Now, I'm not saying that when you take them to someone's house or grandma's, you say, show grandma your vagina, show grandma your penis. But if you are teaching them the anatomy and the correct names. We don't rename our elbow. We don't rename our nose. Why rename the private part? Tell them that's your vagina and that's your penis. Little kids, Scott, what I don't think people realize is little kids don't find this to be funny. They just think, that's my vagina, that's what it's called. You know who finds this to be funny later on? Parents, adults. They giggle and they laugh. If you teach a kid early on, why would they think that that's funny? Why would they think that penis, that's your penis, is something funny? That's part of me. Just
because
like that's
we've been ingrained as a society to think this is taboo.
Absolutely. That's why I wrote it. So we don't want it to be taboo. We don't want you to call it a pocketbook or a coochie coo or a poochie pop.
Call it what it is.
Call it what it is, because if, God forbid, a kid gets touched and they go to an adult and they say, someone touched my pocketbook, that adult's going to think someone touched their purse.
Right. They're not going to know.
They're not going to know. What do you mean your pocketbook? Right. Oh, down there. What do you mean down there? My vagina. And that's what it is.
These two books, Genius with a Penis, Don't Touch, and My Privates Are Private. 2 excellent books.
Thank you.
You can go on Amazon.com.
Go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, my website, call me, email me, Facebook me. I'll get them to you. But we're trying to get them into the schools because education is key. You know, they stay away from it. I think people pass the buck. I think parents say maybe teachers should talk about it. Teachers say, well, maybe parents should. Guess what? Everybody needs to talk about it. Everybody needs to take a part in this. I don't understand why in the schools you can't have why you have to wait till 6th grade or 5th grade to talk about sex education. So that's why I wrote, and in a long-winded version of your question, that's why I wrote these books.
We want to give a big shout out for those of you who are just joining us now and joining the conversation to Jill Scherer Murray, as well as Joan Zucker, CZUKOR.
Yes.
Okay, you want to make sure I pronounce that right?
Jill is in Philadelphia. She herself is an accomplished blogger, soon to be author. So I'm glad she's tuning in and watching. Everyone needs to go to her page also.
And also a big shout out to Jeffrey Wayne Bordrin and also Lisa Ellen Manzi. We got some fans of yours, Stacey, here.
And fans or people that I said you better call in? That's
Getting back on topic, Stacey, you stress the importance of education as a means to helping prevent sexual crimes. You also emphasize the consequences associated with people's actions. Here's a clip that we have edited talking to the local station in LA about that. Let's roll that footage.
Everything's education. I don't think that people know the real consequences of their actions. And when you have a judge that gives someone a slap on the wrist for 6 months, it's almost like a free-for-all. You have to know what the consequences of your actions are. There were 3 kids, baseball scholars, I think it was at Vanderbilt, 15 years. They were dragging an unconscious woman. Somebody got it on their cell phone. They each raped this woman. 15 years in prison.
Right.
Was that promoted enough so that people could see? And that's what I'm trying to do. I would go to the campuses. I would speak to the athletic department. It's not just the athletes. It's anybody, to let them know that if this happens and if you're caught and if we can prosecute, you will be charged and you will be convicted, and you're not going to get a 6-month sentence. This really, I think, put in the eyes of most people that we can do it and we can get away with it.
Does your message of educating and protecting our children hit home with all that you're doing in your position as the head of the state crimes supervisor, providing legal analysis on TV? I mean, is it hitting home? Are we doing enough as a society to keep our kids safe?
Listen, we're never going to be able to fully protect. That's just not possible. But I don't think we are doing enough in the education field. And that's evidenced by me having such a difficult time sometimes talking about these books in places where I should be allowed to talk about them. Listen, if you've got cooking shows and you're teaching people how to cook, I think that's great. If you have a show where you're teaching we talk about things in the medical field. We see doctors on morning shows talking about various conditions and what to do and weight gain and weight loss and all. I just don't understand why this can't be a part of the schedule. Because like you said earlier, Scott, you said it's taboo, and it still is. It's gotten better. I have to say, in my years of doing this, it's gotten better. I've gotten more calls to go out and speak. A call just the other day with a school that said to me, listen, I didn't know if we were ever going to really engage in this, but I think with what's going on with social media and stuff like that, then there needs to be discussion about it. So we're getting better. And I'm just hoping that it becomes, like I said, mainstream. That it's not, you don't go and order my book under the cloaking of a brown cover, like, oh God, I don't want anyone to see that I'm reading my kid, my privates are private. People would be proud of you. Parents would be proud. And I think lots of times people are apprehensive when I'm first giving a talk, because I really do. I don't sugarcoat things. I'm not going to sugarcoat
I know you don't.
things, because if you sugarcoat stuff, you give people a false hope. You really do. So I tell them the nit and grit, how many cases, what I've done, how many things go to trial, how many predators there could be, where predators could lurk, things that you would never maybe think could go on actually do. And it does scare them, and they don't want to be so fearful that they don't let their child do anything. I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be where they make a conscious effort to find out backgrounds, to know what's going on, to talk to their kid. Because so many times in these cases, and another reason I wrote the book is because a child might be victimized for 2 to 3 years before they tell. because they're scared, because the perpetrator said, don't tell, I'm going to kill you, kill your family, kill your mother, never buy you anything, never, threats. And I always tell the parents, if you tell these kids, come to me after the first time, then those threats will no longer remain, because they're going to go out and get that person. They're going to make sure you're safe. Don't let it fester. Don't let it sit. Repeat victims. Victimization goes on and on and on because kids are unaware that they really should be reporting this and telling someone.
And you mentioned earlier in the show that the common misperception, I'll say misperception, was that the sexual predator was a stranger, someone who was unknown. But as we all know too well, having covering these cases for years, close family member. Maybe it's a teacher.
Coach.
Coach.
You mean coach cases
Right.
we have now? I mean,
in the churches, in the synagogues, it almost seems that these folks get into this line of work to get close to those kids, and they develop friendships with these kids to develop that quote-unquote trust.
Absolutely. That's exactly what a true pedophile does. I mean, let's be realistic. If you're touching kids or having sex with kids, you want to be around kids. You want to find other victims. So where do you gravitate to? You're going to gravitate to areas where there's a lot of kids. That's not to say, Facebook people, that anybody that's a teacher, that's a coach, that's a camp counselor, that's what is a pedophile. All I'm telling you is sometimes we put too much trust because we think that there's such a fabulous relationship between maybe that coach and that child. I just want you to be aware. I want you to be aware and ask questions. If you see a relationship developing more so than should be, late night phone calls, late night text, weekends where the kid isn't being coached, but the coach wants to see the child, take the child places, do things with the child. You know what? Ask questions. You don't have to automatically assume that this is a predator, but ask your kids some questions. Everything, what's going on here? Because we tend to see that, well, we do know that a grooming process takes place. This is a trust. And so if they're in that position of trust, a parent isn't going, when I prosecuted an elite gymnastics coach, I had so many people that came to the courtroom to scream at me for doing that because he was the coach and he was grooming them to be elite gymnasts. He was spending, these women thought it was great.
Sort of like the folks that went off on us as the media saying, how can you vilify Joe Paterno?
Absolutely.
The most winningest coach. But as we found out,
he knew.
Through the stories that were broke, you know, that we did HLN night after night, CNN, Fox, and we saw what happened, right?
Absolutely.
They covered it up. And recently, I think, the president was sentenced to prison, Spanier. I mean. Absolutely.
I mean, and that's what happens. And parents believe that because their child maybe is an elite athlete and this coach is doing what, you know, they have this trust, which they should have. But that trust many times is broken. And I just want parents to be aware. Ask questions. Ask if you see an unnatural relationship developing, too much outside of the athletic forum that your kid is involved in, or teacher, or anything else, anybody that's in a position of trust to your child, if it smells bad, ask some questions. Don't just think to yourself, this is just someone that has my son or my daughter's interests genuinely at heart. It's not always that way.
Having their own interests at heart and having ulterior motives.
Absolutely. Sometimes there's an ulterior motive to it.
And we talk about rapes on campuses, the Sandusky trial, the Duke Rape Lacrosse Case.
We forgot to mention Cosby. I saw it in my clip.
Wow. How can we forget that?
Yeah.
Someone who's rich and famous, and we say, you know what, do we give them a pass? And how many women have come forward? And I know sometimes the statute of limitations sometimes, gets people off.
Yeah.
But now there's women, I mean, look, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, right?
Absolutely.
In a court of law.
Absolutely.
But it just shows you every walk of life. Bill Cosby, the guy that we grew up idolizing, a lot of us watching TV,
I always say this. Sex perpetrators and sexual abuse victims knows no boundaries. I have prosecuted the richest of rich, the poorest of poors, black, white, Hispanic, Asian. It doesn't matter. And that goes for both the perpetrator and the victim. It knows no boundaries. So when people say to me, what's the profile of a pedophile or a sex abuser? I say, I don't know, because look at Cosby. Sometimes when someone's arrested down the street for pedophilia or child porn, the first thing the neighbors might say, oh my God, he's the nicest guy. Oh my God, I would never have believed it. And that's why you have to keep your ears and your eyes open, because sometimes it's the people that you would never, ever suspect. Sometimes it's a family. Oftentimes it's a family member.
Or someone close to the family.
Close to the family. Listen, there's no easy answers for this. It's a difficult subject, I understand, but let's get out there. Let's pound the pavements. Let's educate. Let's teach people. Here's the things to look for, the things to know about. If you're a child, listen, know where to go if there's an issue, if you feel uncomfortable and you think something's wrong. But so many times kids come in, and when I ask them, did you know when he touched your vagina that was wrong? And I have a little kid say to me, no. Well, why didn't that kid know it was
wrong? Because they weren't educated at home by the parents. Why? Because the subject was too taboo.
Mom or dad didn't want to talk about it.
Right, too off limits to talk about.
And then the child was a victim, and even talking about it wouldn't have stopped it.
That was the point I was going to make too.
Wouldn't have stopped it, but that kid would have known after the first time, I got to report it. It's only because somebody walked in and saw it. That's the only reason that we knew. We actually had a witness walk in and see this man on top of her. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said anything.
Let me ask you. I know you've handled a ton of cases, and I know your job as a prosecutor is to seek justice wherever the evidence may lead, whether you agree with some verdicts or you don't. But being a human, and the great work that you do as an author, as an advocate for children, for women, for men, for people who are rape victims, not just.
No, I'm going to
right.
Go ahead. I'll tell you about the men.
Right. So let me ask you, how do you balance that seesaw, let's say, of doing your job as a prosecutor to seek justice wherever the evidence may lead to a conviction, to a not guilty verdict, where it may just tear your insides,
or to a plea,
in a case where the evidence, maybe you didn't get the verdict that you thought that this suspect deserved, right, who was on trial.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it happens a lot.
Yes.
Because the prosecution didn't meet the burden of proof of what was given. The jury
Correct.
saw it otherwise. But your gut tells you. How do you balance the two?
It's very difficult. It's very difficult. You know, in some cases where, let's suppose we know that the defendant confessed to the crime. And for a technical reason and under the law, the defense attorney was able to suppress that confession. And so I didn't have that to go into trial. So I know that he confessed to doing it, but suppose Miranda was read improperly, or there's some other technical reason. And I lose that case. You know, there's nothing you can say or do. You got a couple of days of really feeling lousy, and what could I have done to make it better, and could I have done anything different? But the bottom line is the jury sees it the way the jury sees it. We saw that in Casey Anthony, the uproar after that verdict came in. We were doing that every night too, Casey Anthony. We thought, oh my God, what is the jury, after the verdict, what did the jury not see that we all saw? But there's certain pieces of evidence that they don't know. There's certain backgrounds in the cases that they're not allowed to be made aware of. So you asked me the balance, there's not a real great balance. There's a lot of chocolate because, that heals and makes you feel a little bit better afterwards. But other than that, you got to pick up and go on the next one. And listen, Scott, not every single case that comes to you, you're going to go to trial on, you're going to seek that conviction. You know, we get cases in where kids, after meeting with us or whatever, really just can't do it. It's really traumatizing. It is. It's difficult.
And understandably, not only kids, but maybe
for adults too. I had adult men. On a big case that I had, a doctor at a very famous hospital who was molesting his adult male patients. Try getting them in to talk to you about it. It's hard. And so we have to kind of weigh. We do have a balance when it comes to that. Putting a kid through having to go to court, some are okay. I've had 4-year-olds on the stand that have no problem because that's just the type of child they are. I've got a 4-year-old that's scared to death and doesn't want to talk.
It's on an individual
Every case
basis,
is different. Right. You can never say to me, what do you do on cases where someone's 5 and the adult is 19? I don't know. I got to get the case in.
We're in the state of Florida. Are the laws on sexual predators, the legislation that's
They're
passed,
tough.
Is it tough enough?
Yeah.
It is?
Yeah, listen, we've changed the statute of limitations on cases, which is good because kids were coming forward. I had a terrible case where someone came forward when he was 30. He didn't know whether he was 11 or 12. Back then, it made a difference whether he was 11 or 12. We had a confession from the defendant who said he did it, and then we didn't know if we could go forward. So we've changed statute of limitations to allow people a longer period of time. Listen, I've had cases where people were molested when they were 5 or 6 and they didn't tell till they were 30. Is it because it didn't happen? No, it's because at 30 they were finally able to talk about it. That's what also I'm trying to prevent with these books. I've had a lot of cases where I've had to bring people in who years have gone by that they finally told. Now you don't have to live with the secret. Nobody talked to them. They were too scared. This is what it's about. Don't keep the secret. So, yeah, the laws, we've got life felonies, we've got first-degree felonies, and,
Let me ask you, when these suspects or actually convicted felons are released from prison, and you talk about rehabilitation and stuff, is there a such thing as rehabilitation for a sexual predator?
Well, you have to talk to a psychologist about that. I've never seen it because I've had cases in my 29 years where the guy came back again. You know, he got out of prison. I had a guy that did 10 years, came back out and did the same thing. I just filed charges the other day on a guy that did it in 2002, went to trial in 2002. Now, years later, I've got a different victim who's come forward. So, in my opinion, no.
So what's the solution in those cases?
They're registered sex offenders. They're registered predators. They have to register with the state if they're in state, if they're out of state, when they move, when they Facebook. We have to know where they're at with bracelets, with the Jessica Lunsford Act. All these things we're trying to put into place to protect people. But it's on the parents to also have to take charge.
Right, but you could track them in their movements, but they still have their arms and legs. They can still attack again.
Hey, listen, we had a guy in a wheelchair, and guess what? He was still able to sexually molest somebody in a wheelchair. So, you know, and said that his penis didn't work and everything else. Whatever. He still had hands, like you said. He still had a tongue and all those other things. So, there is no solution. There's education and there's
awareness.
Awareness. This is what can go. Listen, watch yourself. Be mindful. Know if there's a problem that you can go to someone and talk about it and you can be protected.
Be street smart, I guess.
I guess so.
Common sense and street smarts.
People a lot of times don't have common sense with this stuff. You know, after sometimes the kid is molested, the mother will be in my office and she'll say to me, you know, I'll say, why did you move him in your house? And I don't want to say this against men, but it happened to me. Why did you move this guy in your house? You knew him for 3 weeks. And she said, well, I don't know. He was so great. He said he was good. He babysat for me every day. So let me get this straight. You move this guy in after 3 weeks. You don't know him. And you leave him with your kid and you're thrilled that like, how stupid are you? You know, how stupid do you have to be?
There was a situation that my wife and I'm not going to mention names, but she has a girlfriend and she's friends with this one gentleman, not dating him, I don't think in a sense, but friends. And we noticed that the behavior of this man when he was around her kids, she's got 4 small kids, 10 years old and younger, I think from the ages of 7 to 10 or 11. And what we noticed, actually, I think the oldest one's 13. What we noticed, and it was abnormal behavior. My wife noticed this at a bowling party. The man was kissing these kids on the lips, touching them, the little girl on the lips, and not just a little peck here or there.
A kiss.
A kiss. And it just seemed a little awkward. And my wife and I had a discussion that night, and we're like, what should we do? And we both said, listen, you got to go.
Absolutely.
And the mother, she acknowledged it. She knew about it. She knew it wasn't right. I think she was torn a little bit. She had her own parents, the grandparents of these kids, mentioned to her, listen, this behavior is not right.
Abnormal.
And we're telling her as bystanders, someone who's just been introduced to this guy a couple of times, listen, we're observing this. We're worried about the safety of your kids. It may start off with a touch, a handhold, a kiss, and then before you know it, you may have yourself a sexual assault case on your hand.
Well, that's called grooming. That's what happens. It starts out little by little by little, and then the behavior becomes more acceptable, and then a true relationship sometimes forms. So, you need to bring it to people. Now, you were aware. You knew that something didn't look right, and even the mom didn't. So you know what? Get yourself out of that situation. Get yourself out of that situation. An assault in the car, nobody's told her that this man improperly touched these kids.
Well, our attitude was, listen, if you lose the friendship over this, so be it. You need to inform your friend if she's not aware, hey, I care more about your kids than anything. And I'm not saying she doesn't care about her kids. Maybe she's oblivious to this. But it didn't seem like she was oblivious because her own parents noticed this. Maybe she didn't want to accept the fact that it was happening, or just wanted to overlook it and think maybe it's not, it can't be me that it's happening to. Or maybe people are exaggerating.
Right.
But my wife saw it for her own eyes. The man holding his lips on the little girl.
You have to be cognizant of what's going on. If it, like I said, if it doesn't smell right, you got to do something about it.
Now, let me ask you, switching gears a little bit, some rape cases aren't as cut and dry as they are. And there's a lot of gray areas. In some cases, the accuser doesn't tell the truth or fabricates the story.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
The Rolling Stone story.
Yes.
That one. Are cases like this the exception?
As far as lying?
As far as what you see in terms...
A victim not telling the truth?
Right.
Listen, there are few cases, few and far between, where you hear about those situations where maybe it's a divorce and maybe one parent, in an effort to get custody, might have coached the kid, say, Daddy touched you. We hope and we pray that we ferret out those cases and that we don't file on those cases. I mean, honestly, and I in my career, you know, if I don't have a good faith basis to go forward, I'm not going forward. And so if there's an iffy case, if we're unsure, we need proof beyond a reasonable doubt. We've got probable cause to arrest, but proof in order to get a conviction and a good faith basis to go forward. And you have to have that in order to do it. So are there cases where people lie? Absolutely. Absolutely. Adult victims lie. Few and far between, but some kids do. Little kids. You've got your teen years where you really have a problem, because now with social media and Twitter and Snapchat and Facebook and bullying and all the other stuff that goes on, we are really caught in a situation where we need to educate kids about what can go wrong. Sexting, texting, sending naked pictures. I mean, all of these things go on, and kids don't realize there are consequences.
We're in a whole new world now.
These
aren't things that we even had to even think about as kids.
No.
We didn't even have cell phones. We didn't have the internet. And now it just seems like...
It's got its good, it's got its great, like for this,
right.
It's great, and then it's got its bad. You know,
right.
we see an increase in child porn. We see in child trafficking. I mean, there's a lot of bad that goes along with it. There's a lot of good that can be done with it because it can get your message across, but it hopefully gets the message across to all the bad stuff that's going on the internet.
And a little shout out to our Facebook fans there and our Florida Sun Studios fans. We're on live from FSS. Stacey Honowitz is joining us today, and we want to thank everyone for joining us. We also want to remind you that next Thursday at 11 a.m., that's when our show is going to be broadcast. Next Thursday, April 6, 11 a.m., I've got a special guest that I'm going to bring in. And this guest, I'm going to tell you about him in a second. It's going to send bone chills down your spine. You've seen him on the news before. He's been profiled. His name is Larry Lawton. He's a former ex-convict. You've heard of the Con Air flights in the movies. This gentleman has actually flown on those Con Air flights, being transported when he was a criminal, the most infamous jewel thief in U.S. history, documented. This man stole more than $18 million in jewelry heist. He was part of the crime families up north. He was a bad dude, but something happened to him when he was in prison. He realized that the cost of his freedom, nothing could give back your freedom. And when he got out of prison after serving 12 hard years in prison, he became an honorary police officer. He became the first ex-con to testify before the U.S. House on inmate abuse. He was actually tortured and abused in prison by prison guards. Horrific stories. The story of Larry Lawton, a New York Times best-selling author, wrote the book called Gangster Redemption. You can see it on Amazon. We'll have it with us next week. But Larry is an interesting guy because he also has judges, local judges around the country. He works with police departments, but judges actually sentence folks, youth offenders, drug offenders, domestic violent offenders, to his program called the Reality Check Program. You are not going to want to miss next week's Live from FSS segment, 11 a.m. sharp Eastern time and 8 a.m. on the West Coast. Stacey, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Scott. It was a pleasure.
I mean, I can't thank you enough. The message, I don't think, could be instilled enough, talked about enough.
That's why you can have me back anytime.
Absolutely, and I am going to have you back.
Okay.
I'm going to have to, you know, you may have a case working on. We're going to have to find out your availability, but I'm used to being on the other side of the camera and shooting your live shots for CNN, HLN, Fox News. But we want this platform that we're providing live from FSS. It's not just the show that I'm producing and hosting, but it's giving people the message so they can get their business promoted, their brand out there. They want to host their own show. Maybe they're a physician, an attorney, an accountant, an engineer, a small mom and pop shop, and they want to promote their brand. There's no better way to do it than going live from FSS. They can have their own show. We have done the backbreaking groundwork for them, building the state-of-the-art studio, complete with studio lighting. Multiple cameras.
Hope this lighting
multiple
is good.
cameras. It's nice and cool for you today.
It's nice and cool, and I'm hoping that the lights that you have on the desk, which I absolutely love because they're supposed to de-wrinkle under your eyes, so I'm hoping that that's the case too, Scott.
Stacey, you say you've been practicing for 29 years. You don't even look a day over 28 years old.
Well, I started when I was 10. Thank you very much.
Maybe mine is 10 here. I don't know.
Anyway, this was so great. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope the viewers liked it. I'd like to hear your comments. I know there was other hearings going on today, but you can watch this over and over again if you really want to.
And we're going to repurpose the material on our Facebook site.
Great.
Visit us at floridasunstudios.com. Sign up for our newsletter. Become informed. Join the conversation. Before we conclude today's segment, we're going to also give a shout out to Robert Allen and Sheena Ori, who liked the video today. A lot of people were live at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. on the West Coast. Sometimes they're working, they don't see it, but you'd be surprised on how many people actually see the rebroadcast or the segments that I'm going to edit and put on, because these are subject matters
that we need to talk about, Scott, so put it on there.
Constantly talk about. Well, you've got an advocate in me.
I know I do. And I know that a lot of the people that follow me on Facebook that know me from television and stuff like that I don't have a personal that I see all the time, but I speak to on Facebook, they've been wonderful in sharing all this stuff, and I hope that they continue to do it, because that's how we get out there. We get our message out there by people sharing important information. So I thank my followers and my viewers, and I hope you take the time to watch it and to talk about it. Just talk about it.
And like Stacey Honowitz's page.
Oh yeah, like my page, Stacey Honowitz, and I'm at Stacey Honowitz on Twitter. StaceyHonowitz.com is my website, and you can get me on my Facebook page, and Stacey B. Honowitz at Hotmail. I'm accessible.
You can even call the Florida Sun Studios main office line.
Call Florida Sun Studios.
Chances are you're going to get a hold of Stacey here too.
Right.
You're one of our guests that lives here, right?
Well,
we want our guests to live here, right?
Yes.
Comfortable.
It's fabulous. Yes.
You got all the TVs, you got the satellites. Beautiful
downtown
Fort
Lauderdale. Doesn't get any better than this. Your message out in a fabulous environment.
My wife wonders sometimes why I don't want to come home to work. From work.
Don't include me in that discussion.
No, not to get me in trouble. And her name's Stacey too. And I love my beautiful wife. And a shout out to you right now, honey. I love you.
Anyway, thank you, Scott, for having me on and for discussing all the important topics that I wanted to cover today. It's a fabulous show.
It's been my pleasure. On behalf of Stacey Honowitz, I'm Scott Wolfson, and we thank you so much for joining us today on Facebook Live on our show. Tune in next week, 11 a.m. Eastern, as Larry Lawton will be our featured guest. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and we'll see you soon.